Hi y'all, this is Maureen again. Today I will be talking on interpersonal violence in the family. Let me introduce this topic by saying that globally, interpersonal violence kills more than 520,000 people each year. The impact of non-fatal violence is also enormous and has grave long-term physical, psychological, economic, and social consequences. The burden is unequally distributed, with 90% of deaths from violence borne by low and middle-income countries, and within countries, the socioeconomically disadvantaged are the more susceptible. Traditionally, interpersonal violence has been perceived as an unavoidable occurrence and has a science-based approach to prevention that has only been promoted in the last few decades. There is a growing evidence base regarding primary prevention, thereby preventing violence, which is often cyclical in nature. One of the challenges facing society is mobilizing the political support needed to tackle the current levels and norms of violence, and risk factors such as poverty and alcohol consumption, which perpetuate interpersonal violence in all its pervasive forms as found in the family. Also, the problem of violence as defined in the World Report on Violence and Health includes the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community, that either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. The World Report on Violence and Health also presents a typology of violence that, while not uniformly accepted, can be a useful way to understand the context in which violence occurs and the interactions between types of violence that happens in the family. This typology distinguishes four modes in which violence may be inflicted, and these are physical, sexual, psychological attack, and deprivation. It further divides the general definition of violence into three subtypes according to the victim-perpetrator relationship, and these are self-directed violence, which refers to violence in which the perpetrator and the victim are the same individual and is subdivided into self-abuse and suicide. The second one is interpersonal violence. This refers to violence between individuals and is subdivided into family, intimate partner violence, and community violence. The former category includes child maltreatment, intimate partner violence, and elder abuse, while the latter is broken down into acquaintance and stranger violence, and this includes youth violence, assault by strangers, violence related to property crimes, and violence in workplaces and other institutions. The last one, which is collective violence, refers to violence committed by a larger group of individuals, and this can be subdivided into social, political, and economic violence. Let's talk about the causes and signs of interpersonal violence in the family. There are a number of risk factors for the perpetration or victimization of interpersonal violence in the family, including individual, relationship, community, and societal factors. Individual factors. These include low income or unemployment, heavy alcohol or drug use, anger and hostility, social isolation, belief in strict gender roles, and a history of abuse. Relationship factors. These include dominance and control by one partner over the other, economic stress, recent separation between partners, and unhealthy family relationships and interactions. Community factors. These include poverty and associated issues like overcrowded housing, low social capital, and weak community sanctions against domestic and family violence. Societal factors. This include condoning of violence against women and rigid gender roles, including men's control of decision-making and limits to women's independence in public and private life. Interpersonal violence can involve a range of different behaviors. Knowing the signs can help you recognize when violence may be occurring and allow you to take appropriate steps to intervene. Let's talk about physical abuse. This includes direct assaults on the body, use of weapons, driving dangerously, destruction of property, abuse of pets in front of family members, assault of children, and forced sleep deprivation. Emotional abuse. This is blaming the victim for all problems in the relationship, constantly comparing the victim with others to undermine self-esteem and self-worth, withdrawing all interest and engagement. Sexual abuse. This includes any form of sexual activity without consent, causing pain during sex, assaulting the genitals, coercive sex without protection against pregnancy or sexually transmitted disease, criticizing or using sexually degrading insults. Social abuse. This is the systematic isolation from family and friends through techniques such as ongoing rudeness to family and friends, moving to locations where the victim knows nobody, and forbidding or physically preventing the victim from going out and meeting people. Verbal abuse. This is continual put-downs and humiliation, either privately or publicly, with attacks following clear themes that focus on intelligence, sexuality, body image, and capacity as a family member, parent, or spouse. Spiritual abuse. This is denying access to ceremonies, land of family, preventing religious observance, forcing victims to do things against their beliefs, denigration of cultural background, or using religious teachings or cultural tradition as a reason for violence. Economic abuse. This is complete control of all monies, no access to bank accounts, providing only an inadequate allowance. How can we prevent interpersonal violence in the family? There exist several strategies that are being used to attempt to prevent or reduce interpersonal violence. It is important to assess the effectiveness of a strategy that is being implemented. Reforming the legislation in order to ensure that interpersonal violence falls under the scope of the law is important. This may imply repealing existing laws which discriminate against women, gender norms that promote the inferiority of women may lead to the abuse of women by intimate partners. The World Health Organization writes that dismantling hierarchical constructions of masculinity and femininity predicted on the control of women and eliminating the structural factors that support inequalities are likely to make a significant contribution to preventing intimate partner and sexual violence. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a key strategy in preventing domestic violence is the promotion of respectful, non-violent relationships through individual, community, and societal level change. Early intervention programs such as school-based programs to prevent dating violence are also effective. Children who grow up in violent homes may be led to believe that such behavior is a normal part of life. Therefore, it is important to challenge such attitudes when they are present among children. How can we support a victim of interpersonal violence in the family? It can be hard to know what to say to a person experiencing interpersonal violence, but here are some ideas of effective ways to support someone experiencing abuse. The first thing to do is to listen. Being listened to can be an empowering experience for a person affected by violence. Give them space to tell their story and be empathetic and compassionate. Validate and believe them. Often, people are not confident to tell their stories in case they are not believed. You can help a person feel stronger by showing you believe what they say, no matter what they share. Be clear to them that you are not blaming them. People who are experiencing domestic and family violence can often feel incredibly scared and unsure of themselves. You can say things like, "Violence is unacceptable. You do not deserve to be treated this way." Avoid asking, "Why don't you leave?" "What could you have done to avoid this situation?" and "Why did they hit you?" As these might suggest they could control the violence by managing their behavior. Above all, help them to seek help. You don't need to try to fix the situation or be a counselor. Refer them to services that can support them. And lastly, it is evident that people who are experiencing interpersonal violence can often feel incredibly scared and unsure of themselves, and in some cases, it leads to death, and hence the need to bring it to a stop. I'll see you all next time.